Accidents that changed history. That single accident, that one mistaken turn down a narrow Sarajevo street, didn't just end the lives of the Archduke and his wife. It set a fuse that would blow the entire world on fire. In the immediate aftermath, there was just screaming, confusion, and a frantic rush to the governor's residence. But within hours, the news hit the capitals of Europe, and the gears of a much larger, much deadlier machine began to turn. Within weeks, a complex, fragile web of alliances snapped into place, like a steel trap. Empowered by a blank check of support from Germany, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. In response, Russia mobilized to protect the Serbs. Germany mobilized against Russia. France and Britain were pulled into the fray. What began as a local tragedy in the Balkans spiraled out of control into a global conflict. And nobody was prepared for what came next. The old tactics of the 19th century met the industrialized slaughter of the 20th century. Trenches stretched for thousands of miles across Europe, creating a muddy, disease-ridden stalemate. For the very first time, humanity witnessed the horrors of mechanized warfare. Machine guns that could cut down hundreds in seconds, the lumbering terror of the first tanks, and the blinding, suffocating nightmare of poison gas. A whole generation of young men walked into a meat grinder. By the time the guns finally fell silent in November 1918, the world was unrecognizable. Roughly 20 million soldiers and civilians were dead, with another 21 million wounded. Empires that had ruled the globe for centuries simply ceased to exist. The Austro-Hungarian Empire splintered. The Ottoman Empire was dismantled. The 300-year dynasty of the Romanovs in Russia collapsed in a bloody revolution, giving rise to the Soviet Union. The map of Europe was entirely redrawn by the victors. In an attempt to prevent this from ever happening again, the League of Nations was born. But it was fractured, missing key members, and tragically too weak to stop the storms that were already brewing on the horizon. Because the peace treaty signed at Versailles didn't heal the world, it just planted the seeds for the next catastrophe. It placed crushing debt and intense humiliation on Germany. And in the dark, desperate years of the 1920s and 30s, those seeds of resentment took root. They were watered by economic collapse and eventually harvested by Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. World War II, a conflict that would claim over 70 million lives and introduce nuclear weapons, was in many ways just part two of the Great War. One wrong turn in Sarajevo didn't just cause a 4-year war. It shaped the geopolitical destiny of the entire 20th century. When we look back, history often feels inevitable. We read it in textbooks and think things had to happen the way they did. But sometimes the fate of millions of people hinges on a single, absurd accident. It leaves you with a haunting question. If that driver, Leopold Loika, had just looked at his map, if he had stayed on the right street, would the world look completely different today?